people on and around this stage who should not be here. Consequently, the musicians on this stage are playing with something like 200 people breathing down their necks. Now, can I please ask that everyone leaves the stage, and as I say, we'll go back to playing music and nothing else.
Jefferson Airplane. Jefferson Airplane.
Would you like to know a secret, baby, just between you and me? I don't know where I'm going next, I don't know who I'm gonna be. And that's the other side of this line. I believe in love. And that's the other side of this line. Other side, go baby. I don't know what I'm doing. Half the time I don't know where I go. Think I'm gonna get me a sailing boat, go from Mexico. And that's the other side of this line. Yeah, I've been reading now. Yeah, that's the other side of this line.
Hey man, I'd like to mention that the Hells Angels just smashed Marty Ballin in the face and knocked him out for a bit. I'd like to thank you for that.
There's other ways.
Hey, wait, you is this on?
You're talking to me, I'm going to talk to you.
I'm not talking to you, man. I'm talking to the people that hit my lead singer in the head.
You're talking to my people.
Right.
Now, let me tell you what's happening.
Man,
What's happening? Hey! Oh!
No!
Hold it.
No!
Oh, fuck.
No, stop it.
You know what's happening?
Stop it.
We're partying like you. Hey!
And you know, that's really stupid.
Hey, man, you guys do not have to stay on the stage, man. They're not going to hassle us, really. They're not really that... It's really not worth it.
No hassles with anybody in particular. You got to keep your bodies off each other unless you intend love. People get weird, and you need people like the angels to keep people in line, but the angels also, you know, you don't bust people in the head for nothing. So both sides are fucking up temporarily. Let's not keep fucking up.
Oh, that's what the story is here?
Yeah.
Oh, bummer.
Really, man. I mean, like, it's scary.
Who's doing all the beating?
Hells Angels.
Hells Angels are doing beating on musicians?
Marty got beat up. They were fighting on the stage.
Doesn't seem right, man.
It's really weird, man. It's really weird.
Oh, man.
There's lots of people.
Really?
Splitting, you know, if those cats can't, we're splitting, man, if those cats don't stop beating everybody up inside. I want them out of the way, man. I don't like unity.
A guy's got a gun out there and he's shooting at the stage.
He's got a gun.
Hey, people, come on, let's be cool. People, please, there's no reason to hassle anybody. Please don't commit it.
If you move back and sit down, we can continue, and we will.
When was this picture taken? Is this a hippie dude in like California in the 60s, you know? Is he like a hippie dude, like some woke dude just taking a black and white picture from right about now, right? Just outside of the hills in California. Like, is he one of the Burning Man curators? I don't know. Well, we checked this out, man. This is actually a picture from at least 100 or over 100 years ago. This is from the time of Volkish peoples, movements, and what is known as Lebensreform in German, which is life reform, right? Basically the origins of the hippie movement, okay? We're going to check this out shortly. I'm going to drop some facts. Check it. Alright, so just to say first, I'm sorry about the recording. I'm just using the laptop speaker, so hopefully I'll be able to do something with a bit better quality soon, but I'll get on with it. Okay, Lebensreform. My German's not the best, but Lebensreform, right? Life reform. Life reform, a social movement in the late 19th century, obviously about reforming the modern lifestyle, okay? Really get back to nature, back to basics lifestyle, spread mainly throughout Germany, Austria, and Switzerland in the late 1800s, early 1900s. But a lot of them actually left, you know, the oppression of bustling early 20th century Europe, of the fin de siècle era, the end of the century, end of the cycle era. because they were too much, they were quite pessimistic towards modern science, pessimistic towards modernity, urban living. This is the time when the first skyscrapers and that are going up, okay? So, very politically diverse movement, okay? There were leftists, there were people on the right, there were people that were like, we don't want anything to do with politics at all, like, we're not into politics, man, all right? These were the proto-hippies, okay? And we're going to see what happened, but a lot of them actually, migrated and set up their own communes in the United States in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and these were the ones that embraced and spawned a lot of the hippie communes in the 1960s, right? Check it out. I want to say this was very politically diverse. I'm not in any way saying that the inheritors of those today are all right-wing. Not at all. Alright, so this is, these are pictures from Mount Verita, which is meaning Mount Truth. It was a commune set up around 1900, I think. Lasted well into the late 20s, early 1930s. So, like we were saying before, this was very back to earth, was one major aspect to it. We're talking about, raw organic food, eating raw food. Really health food craze was really kicked off around this thing. Alternative medicine, right? So rejecting, in many ways, or just shying away from modern medicine, trying to look back to the ancient or medieval, even, medical techniques. Obviously natural medicine. And they were about, no alcohol, no tobacco, we don't like pharmaceuticals, and we definitely don't like vaccines, right? They were quite one thing, even though it was a diverse community, politically and socially and with ideas, very diverse, as we were saying. One thing that was quite staunch among most of these life reform communes was that they were anti-vaxxers, right? They were strongly anti-vax, okay? So, like we're saying, this is a really kind of agrarian, back to roots, agrarian nationalism, I guess, in a lot of ways you can say. Again, not all of them were necessarily that nationalist or right-wing. There were anarchists, socialists, people that were like, I'm not into politics, man, that kind of thing. And these were the original hippies, all right? If you want to look at hippies in the modern era. No tobacco, no alcohol, no pharmaceuticals, and no vaccines in our community. Thank you. We don't want to be part of your skyscraper metropolis with your smog and your science and wireless technology, which was coming in that time as well. So yeah, that's the thing. Check it out. All right, again from Mount Truth, yeah. We can see here, which is like a kind of freedom, woke, conscious dance kind of thing going on. Generally no contact. Kind of looking in here, like they've got the gong that they're playing. So it's a little bit like a drum circle as well. But you got to ask yourself as well, like, is this the late 1800s, early 20th century, or are we trying to like kind of get back to the ancient ways? It looks almost like a kind of bacchanalia from ancient Greece. And definitely this is what was being attempted, a rejection of modernity and a return to the ancient, pagan ways, the ancient mystical ways, the connection with the earth and so on. So yeah, we've got this free form movement dance here. You might even be able to be excused by saying that this is a picture from Woodstock, right? You could see this shit going down in Woodstock too. Yeah, so ain't nothing wrong with it. Looks like it's a lot of fun. We're gonna see some other pictures as well that look like they're a lot of fun. And you think about the smog and the pollution that was starting to come in the 19th century, right? Particularly towards the end of the 19th century, where you've got all of the first skyscrapers going up, like we were saying, but we've also got like industry really kicking off. You've got like electricity first coming in. You've got railroads and trams, and uh, a whole lot of like, really kind of oppressive hustle bustle metropolis kind of thing. People wanted to get out of that, right? And let's like fuck off modernity, man. Like, let's get back to the ancient medieval ways. Even further, let's get back to the ancient, ancient European ways. So have a think about this, because you'll see we're going to fade into now how this has survived into today. You check it. All right, so 5 rhythms, right? Some of you may have been to this, yeah? You can see the similarity with the past picture. It was a woman who during the 60s, Gabrielle Roth, I think her name is, she traveled through Germany, had some accident in the 60s, I think early 70s. She came through this process, like learning more about shamanism, about trance dance, transpersonal psychology, Gestalt psychology, which is also originated in Germany at the time of life reform, early 20th century kind of thing in Germany and Austria. So she was born in California anyway, and she lived through the hippie era, and she created 5 rhythms in the late 1970s. She's passed away now, but she's given a lot to the world through the 5 rhythms. A lot of people have found a lot to connect with there. I've participated myself. I think it's awesome. So I just wanted to say that, again, with what we're going to go into in this video, there's a lot of healthy things about the life reform movement, a lot of healthy things about, obviously, the hippie counterculture, a lot of healthy things about Volkish, back to the land kind of, critique on modernity as well. Just, that's really important to say that. So the end of the 19th century, yeah, we get fin de siècle. That's what it's called, the period, like 1880s, 1890s. These were kind of like the 100 years before the millennial generation, yeah, and they experienced a lot of the same things. In their teenage years, in the 1890s, we had the second industrial revolution, full swing. Vaccines were becoming commercialized. They'd existed before then, but there were really pharmaceuticals, pills, like a whole lot of the pharmaceutical big pharma was coming in. Electricity was just coming in. Galvanized steel was just coming in. All of these things were becoming in big scale, and a lot of the youth, it was like quite confronting for, and as we were saying, they wanted to get back into nature. Another thing about this, apart from the raw organic food and the no vaccines, was sexual liberation, right? And nudity, right? Nudism was a big thing with these life reform communes. Again, this is from Mount Truth. And who visited this particular commune, but give you an indication of the life reform in general, right? We had Trotsky and Lenin, who would later form the Bolshevik Revolution there. We had Jiddu Krishnamurti, the mystic, Max Weber, Carl Jung, the revolutionary psychologist, Rudolf Steiner. You guys know Steiner schools probably. The anarchist Diefenbach, Hermann Hesse, the writer. Max Weber, the sociologist. So this was a hip place to be, man, like, for over 100 years ago. And you think people born around 1880, by the time we get to the 1920s, they'd raised whole families here. They were in their 40s and the 20s, 50s and the 1930s, yeah? So, just like the hippie counterculture in the 1960s, this was a form of escapism, as it was in the 60s, and a lot of the youth of the 60s that escaped from that, they stayed on. They formed communes, they kept this culture alive, and they passed it on. They raised families, and they raised grandkids and even great-grandkids. This was going on from like the late 1800s, 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. By the time we get into the 1930s, it's kind of like today, what was 60 years ago was like 1961, okay? So we can see how all of the, the youthful hippies from that time are now quite older, but they, are keeping the counterculture alive, the hippie culture that's evolved and morphed and has many different aspects as well, right? It's not one homogenous, monolithic culture, the hippie counterculture at all. Just got to look at the yippies turning into the yuppies and all of that shit, but we won't get into it. Obviously, this is a fun thing for the youth, yeah? And I'll just read really quickly this, and hopefully I can get it through. Sidestepping the organized left's demands for fundamental state-imposed social and economic change, the advocates of life reform, Lebensreform, looked instead to remedy the alleged ills of modernity, which for them were above all feelings of spiritual emptiness and alienation from both the natural world and the traditional communities. And they sought to remedy this through freely chosen changes of lifestyle. Nudism, vegetarianism, homeopathic medicine, sport and physical culture, free love, dance therapy, eugenics, education reform, Wandervogel youth groups, return to
the country a little bit right now.
So there is this rejection of urban living, like get out of the cities, rejection of modernity, rejection of technology, rejection of science, rejection of pharmaceuticals. As we were saying, rejection of vaccines, right? Huge anti-vax. Same book, that we're quoting from here. New agricultural communities and garden cities that we can see here in this picture that were set up. There were many programs that proposed to affect these changes. But in Brown Shirt Princess, he kind of provides a criticism in his view, in many people's view, was kind of like a bourgeois middle class, kind of like middle class, upper middle class, like rich kids, escapism kind of thing. It was a revolt that avoided any real change to the established order, to quote, and is seen as often quite potentially dangerous retreat from the political era, in that, these social ills that had to be cured could only be cured by engaging with them, and by people just saying, oh yeah, fuck it, let's just turn our back on it and not face the problem. Let's not try and tackle these issues, right? Like we're seeing with climate change today, yeah? Tackle these industrial issues, we'll just leave, in this huge kind of like exodus. So, I'll just read really quickly as well from same book, Brown Shirt Princess. I'll put the link in, check it out. But yeah, these agricultural communities you can see here, right? Several prominent themes can be identified, many of them recognizably inspired by life reform, especially in its more volkish manifestations. These are the creation of a new man and a new world, liberation from the unnatural, life-denying beliefs and social conventions, rejection of modern liberal, capitalist, democratic, urban civilization, regarded as responsible for encouraging egoism and undermining community ties and destroying the nobler human qualities and values, the recovery of an authentic native German culture still close to the natural world and uncontaminated by modern rationalism and alienation, a repudiation of established religious faiths, especially in the form of an allegedly unnatural and alien transcendentalist and legalistic Christianity rooted in Judaism. All of these things, a cult of the energetic, the active, the heroic, the independent-minded, the individual, freed from the constraints of a false or alien morality, standing above the crowd, called on to lead forward into the new life. Emphasis at the same time on the all cosmos or life force or God in every individual. All of these things, yeah? We can see how they fed into the hippie movement. We can see how they exist today with the ancestors of these proto-hippies, yeah? Very diverse again. We'll see how this starts to evolve. Alright, so here we've got like a proto-hippie man, right? This is before the World War, like this is the original millennial, or like the original turn of the century man, rejection. What was being rejected, right? What were people so pessimistic and standing in rejection of in modernity at this close of the century, fin du siècle time? I'll run through a couple of things, right? This is me just quoting Wiki, but you can see that the links are there, all right? So don't pay me out for that. Major political theme of the era was that of revolt against materialism, okay? Rebelling against rationalism, rebelling against positivism, bourgeois, middle-class, capitalist society, liberal democracy, right? Against all of that. What did they want to replace it with instead? What were they turning towards? Well, instead of rational thinking, we've got a turn towards emotionalism, yeah? Instead of scientific positivism, we're looking at subjectivism, vitalism, irrationalism, yeah? And, we can see this stuff that has been happening with the millennial generation, with the turn from the 20th into the 21st century as well. There was this feeling that there was great technological change and humanity was on a new frontier, and a lot of people were rebelling against what they saw, quite rightly to be in a lot of cases, a corrupt, false democratic system that was centered around the rich and to cater to the rich, capitalists and so on. And people were fed up with it, yeah? So they turned to populist methods, yeah? And turned to ways that were getting into not exactly science, that was quite anti-science, anti-modern, anti-rational. So, like we're seeing, man, a lot of the scientific people getting frustrated by these crazy like flat Earth conspiracy theories, right? Lizard people and so on, that are really based on kind of emotional, intuitive, subjective dream work and imagination. Yeah. There's this clash of forces going on. And you can see that with this, German soldier right behind, this is probably like pre-World War One, or just after. And this young, back to the land, life reformer hippie dude, like strolling through the urban metropolis, in his defiance of modernity, defiance of the scientific, crazy 20th century world of erecting skyscrapers and hit their smart cities at the time. The radio was coming out, wireless technology. They were, against wireless and against wires as well. Let's break free from all of that. And anti-vaccination, right? Anti-vaxxers. So again, I'm just pulling this straight from the wiki. I mean, I quoted Brown Shirt Princess, and I'll put the link in there, but, wiki is well referenced as well. This is just a quick video, okay? So, check it out for yourself, but you will see, there is plenty of evidence to support everything that I'm saying in this video, okay? If you want to challenge me in the comments, go right ahead. I'm just going to read straight out from the wiki article because I don't have much time, but this is to get the point across, okay? This is where we see 1880s, 1890s, early, 1900s, before the First World War, and then even into the 1920s, it's still pretty hip and hipster kind of, proto-hippie. Again, very diverse movement, okay? There were anarchists, there were socialists, there were right-wingers, there were nationalists, there were people that were just straight up really, drop out hippies, not wanting politics at all. Very diverse. But when you have fascism come in after the First World War, okay, in the 1920s, about 100 years ago, that's when this movement starts to really take more of a right-wing turn, okay? With the founding of Mussolini's fascists and the founding of the National Socialist Party in 1920 or 21, okay? Now, we'll read this out. A specific stream of life reform based on Volkish romanticism gradually became part of Nazi ideology by the 1930s, known as blood and soil. As early as 1907, Richard Ungewitter published a pamphlet called Nudity and Culture, which sold 100,000 copies at least, arguing that the practices he recommended would be, to quote, okay, the means by which the German race would regenerate itself and ultimately prevail over its neighbors and the diabolical Jews, who were intent on injecting putrefying agents. Intent on injecting putrefying agents into the nation's blood and soil, right? The diabolical Jews who were intent on injecting putrefying agents into the nation's blood, right? Look at that, man. Injecting putrefying agents, I'll say it again, these were huge anti-vaxxers, into the nation's blood, these diabolical Jews. Now, the Jews were also lumped together as the enemy of the people with, Freemasons, Jews and the Freemasons, the Jews and the Socialists, the Jews and the Leftists, the Jews and the Communists, intellectuals, right? People that were overly educated, too much into books, not back to nature. They were urbanites. They were people that were corrupted by the city, They were all down with the Jews, with their evil modern conspiracy to destroy nature, to destroy the pure people, right, in society, right, the genuine humans. Everyone was becoming a cyborg. So yeah, injecting putrefying agents into the nation's blood. That's what they accuse the Jews, socialists, lefties, and intellectuals and scientists of conspiring to do against the life reform movement. So again, like, these pictures are from the 1920s, yeah? This picture anyway, right? The past few. And this is during the rise of fascism, the early decade, the first decade of fascism, yeah, of National Socialism in Germany, yeah. So the life reform, Lebensreform, the folk movement, the folkish movement, the extremists promoting right-wing ideology eventually became popular among Nazi party officials and their supporters, including Heinrich Himmler, right, occultist and architect of the Holocaust, and Rudolf Hess, who belonged to the right-wing farming organization, the Artamen League, Agriculture Man League. When other groups were being banned or disbanded due to the political conflict during the 1930s, remembering this, okay, like we were saying, a lot of these early groups that were anti-vax, a lot of them were disbanded by the Nazis, okay, because they weren't right-wing enough. I'm not saying that all hippies are necessarily Nazis. That's preposterous. I am not saying that, all right? Because I keep getting told by people not listening that's what the assumptions that we're making. But to repeat, when other groups were being banned or disbanded due to the political conflict during the 1930s, the extreme nationalist ideology became connected with National Socialism, okay? So the extreme nationalist kind of life reform, hippie stuff started to get connected with the Nazis. The German Life Reform League broke apart into political factions during this time. The nationalist physician Arthur Fedor Fuchs began the League for Free Body Culture, the FKK, giving public lectures on the healing powers of the sun in the Nordic sky, which alone strengthened and healed the warrior nation. That ancient warrior nation, right? Ancient forest living and habits presumed to have been followed by the ancient tribes of Germany were beneficial to regenerating the Aryan people, according to Fuchs' philosophy. Hans Suren, a prominent former military officer, published Man and Son in 1924, which sold 240,000 copies. By 1941, it was reissued in 68 editions. Suren promoted the Aryan master race concept of physically strong, militarized men who would then be the salvation of the German people, right? See this today with, only the pure humans that are non-vaccinated being able to survive and populate the earth. So if you've seen Jojo Rabbit, right, you'll see that in the Hitler Youth, and you can check this out, this was real as anything, there was this Volkish life reform, Lebensreform influence, about getting back to the land, getting back into nature, connecting with the racial soul, with the folk soul of the people, with this original, ancient, primordial humanity, more about the instinct, natural instinct, connecting with the green, connecting with the nature. And yeah, that was to instill this almost animal instinct in these young warriors, as we saw in the previous clip. They were to be trained as the ancient Teutonic, warrior knights, and to do that they had to understand blood and soil, organic living, back to the earth, organic food, healthy exercise. You see that in the Jojo Rabbit camp. A lot of the, life reform, gymnastics and sports and exercising in nature. So all of these themes are there, and all of them were fed into the Hitler Youth as it was being written in these, proto-hippie communes that had taken a swing to the right in the 1920s as fascism and National Socialism were born and were made more popular. these hippie movements went right-wing, right? And in that same way, you can see a lot of the hippie influence in National Socialism, in the Hitler Youth trying to raise the eco-warriors of the future, yeah? Now, what would they do? Here's the Hitler Youth, right? Back in the city now, burning books. These were hundreds, I think, at least in the scores of public ceremonies, reading straight from Wiki again, plenty of evidence for this. The Nazi book burnings were a campaign conducted by the German Student Union to ceremonially burn books in Nazi Germany and Austria in the 1930s. The books targeted for burning were those viewed as being subversive or as representing ideologies that were opposed to Nazism. These included books written by Jewish, communist, socialist, anarchist, liberal, pacifist, religious, and sexologist authors, among others. All right, some of the books that were burned were books by Einstein, right? Not only because he was a Jew, but also because it was part of this Nazi anti-intellectual culture, okay, which we will look at. These book burnings in Nazi Germany were hailed by Goebbels as ending the age of extreme Jewish intellectualism, all right? Looking at this, in Mein Kampf, Hitler complained of biased over-education, of brainwashing, people being too educated, lacking raw natural instinct and will, of the forest and so on. In many other passages, Hitler made his anti-intellectual bent clear. Intellectuals were frequently the butts of Hitler's jokes, yeah? So you got to remember all of this stuff, man. They were burning books because they were anti-intellectual, anti-science, anti-Einstein in this way, basically anyone that could provide a critique, logical, rational critique. They were about irrational willpower and war. So yeah, another book burning, this time with the adults, right? These happened regularly in Nazi Germany. And why? Because of this anti-intellectualism. Now remember, it was going on from way before. The Nazis weren't the ones to start it. This was fin de siècle, turn of the century, anti-intellectualism, anti-science, anti-rationality, mystical, magical thinking, all right? Now, I actually happen to be quite into magic and esotericism and mysticism and the occult. I think it's fascinating, right? But there is, like with everything, has substance and shadow, okay? A knife can be used to heal and to remove a cancer. It can be used to kill, right? The same as with poison and an antidote, right? Venom can kill, it could also provide the antidote and can be used as a painkiller, we're finding, all right? So, we've got to understand all these things. I'm not saying that the life reform, the original hippies of the late 19th century, early 20th century, with their anti-science, anti-vaccination, anti-modernity, anti-technology, kind of thing, that they were all Nazis. And indeed, the Nazis quite embraced science in a lot of ways. But we do see this, anti-intellectualism come up here. And as we know, Hitler's jokes were often aimed at intellectuals. They were singled out as attacks. It's also related to the anti-Semitism. The Jews were accused of being intellectual, too intellectual, having a destructive, critical spirit, always criticizing things. And of course, the Jews were also lumped together with other enemies of the Nazis, and they were killed en masse with the Jews, right? So who were the Jews in bed with? Well, the evil Freemasons, okay? Think about conspiracies going on. Who are the enemies of the Nazis? Who did they kill en masse? I think 20,000 or 50,000 or more Freemasons were killed in the Holocaust. Leftists, trade unionists, anarchists, socialists, communists of all kinds, liberals, all right? Who are the enemies here of the kind of MAGA crowd, and conspiracy theories, liberals, Democrats, okay, people who believe in democratic parliament, ministers of parliament, you know. Rightly, the Weimar Republic before the Nazis was fairly corrupted parliament. It wasn't a real democracy like we're seeing today. It's being corrupted, so they were kind of right in that. But you know, they were against democracy, against ministers of parliament, and the unemployed were the butt of their attacks. The homeless, migrants and refugees, like the Romani, right? The Romani are also known as the Gypsies, right? So yeah, anti-Freemason, anti-leftist, anti-liberal, anti-democrat, anti-parliamentarians, anti-science, anti-intellectual, anti, you know, against the homeless, against refugees and migrants, against the unemployed. These are all the targets of the Nazis, along with the Jews, and they killed lots of them. Now, what does that make you think about today? Who has the same enemies today? Think about that.
Boy, we're pilgrims in an unholy land.
Doctor? Where is it?
How did you get here?
Where is it? I want it!
You came back for the book? Why?
My father didn't want it incinerated.
Is that what you think of me? I believe in the Grail, not the swastika.
You stood up to be counted with the enemy of everything that the Grail stands for. Who gives a damn what you think?
You do!
All I have to do is squeeze.
All I have to do is scream.
Got it. Let's get the hell out of here.
So yeah, here's a Nazi newspaper that began in 1923. I'm just going to read the wiki again. Again, plenty of evidence for this. If you want to debate me that it doesn't exist, go ahead and challenge me in the comments. Got plenty of backup. I just don't have time to go through all of it right now. But anyway, check out this, right? Here's a conspiracy theory where 𝙤𝙭and 𝙤𝙩𝙗 furthered medieval stereotypes. These began in the Middle Ages with the Catholic Church, by the way, accusing Jews of killing children, sacrificing their bodies, and drinking their blood. Now, does this sound anything like QAnon to you? All right. What do we see? So, aimed at dehumanization and demoralization. Okay, now, of course, they don't explicitly say it's the Jews doing it, but again, another one of the Nazis' enemies, Democrats and liberals. Okay, they're the child-killing, sacrificing, blood-drinking, the Democrats and the liberals. Okay, and the Freemasons, of course, again, also destroyed, killed en masse with the Jews in the Holocaust. Now, let us see. The paper described Jews as sex offenders, yeah, violators of the innocent, perpetrators of bizarre sex crimes, and ritual murderers, who allegedly performed in religious ceremonies using blood of other humans, usually Christians, as we've seen Christian children, right? Stryker also frequently reported attempts of child molestation by the Jews. 𝙤𝙗𝙩𝙗𝙗 never lacked details about sexual intercourse, names, and crimes in order to keep readers aroused and entertained. These accusations, articles, and crimes printed in 𝙤𝙗𝙗 were often inaccurate and rarely investigated by staff members. All of these things directly, they haven't tried to cover it too much with the QAnon conspiracy. And again, right, obviously George Soros is like one of the worst evil characters behind the evil, leftist plot. And he's Jewish, okay? But it doesn't matter. Who are the enemies of the Nazis, right? Freemasons. This is who's behind the QAnon plot. The Democrats, the liberals, okay? Leftists, socialists, communists. They're all the ones. They just replace explicitly saying Jews by saying it's Hollywood celebrities. Everyone knows Hollywood has a lot to do with the Jews, right? But they don't have to focus on that. The Nazis had plenty of enemies. Again, look at the conspiracy theories that are out there. Who are the evil people that are trying to vaccinate us and kill us all and depopulate us? They're the Freemasons. They're leftists. They're Antifa, okay, anti-fascists. They're socialist Democrats. Intellectuals, all right, journalists that don't pull the line, they're the fake news. Again, Nazi enemies, the academics in universities that questioned any of the Nazi crazy conspiracy theories or ideology, along with transvestites, homosexuals, lesbians, okay, all seen as perverts, prostitutes, people on welfare, street beggars, alcoholics, drug users, right? We're looking again at this anti-alcohol and drug and tobacco and pharmaceuticals, along with the anti-vaccination of the life reform movement. The evil communist, Freemason, Jewish journalist media that's conspiring. So remember, okay, like, fascism and National Socialism was extremely, state voluntarist in legal philosophical terms. It was anti-international. The Nazis left the League of Nations. America, refused to join it, despite the fact that their president was Woodrow Wilson was one of the first to initiate it in, just after the First World War. But yeah, this idea about the League of Nations and the United Nations being an evil communist conspiracy run by the Freemasons to, attack the national sovereignty of righteous, wholesome people and destroy humanity with their occultism. There were occult elements to Nazism as well. But any occult groups that objected to the Nazi terror were struck out against. So quickly, again, straight from the wiki, you want to challenge me, go ahead. Freemasons are consistently considered an ideological foe of Nazism and their world perception. The Nazis claimed that high-degree Masons were willing members of the Jewish conspiracy and that Freemasonry was one of the causes of Germany's defeat in World War I. In Mein Kampf, Adolf Hitler wrote that Freemasonry has succumbed to the Jews and has become an excellent instrument to fight for their aims and to use their strings to pull the upper strata of society into their designs. He continued, the general pacifist paralysis of the national instinct. Again, the nation state is sovereign. Sovereign citizens again, right? Not fighting against the evil conspiracy, false corporation government, right? Of the liberal Democrats. The general pacifist paralysis of the national instinct of self-preservation begun by Freemasonry is then transmitted to the masses of society by the press, yeah? Goering said, in National Socialist Germany, there is no place for Freemasonry. So we know that lots, about 80,000 to 200,000 Freemasons were murdered under the Nazi regime. There's heaps more that I could look into here. Just be reminded of that when you're reading conspiracy theories about who's trying to depopulate us. The same old enemies of the Nazis, right? The Freemasons. Wonder if it's the Nazis saying that again. Now, people can debate the Nazi relationship with the church and Christianity. It is quite nuanced, but it is a fact that the mainstream Christian churches supported Nazism, both on the Protestant and the Catholic side. And again, we can see with Christian fascism and Christian nationalism in the United States, groups like Proud Boys, groups like the Three Percenters, I think it is, groups like the Oath Keepers, they're always saying that they're just standing up for Christianity. They see themselves as Christian crusaders, fighting Muslims and fighting evil, secular forces of, corruption, believing that, all other religions are going to hell. But yeah, you can see this strong Christian fascist, Christian nationalist element in Nazi Germany and in modern day America with these groups, yeah. Now, reading out a quote by Hitler, and you can look at these pictures here, all the stuff about casting out the devil and stuff, but here's a quote by Hitler in a speech. The national government will therefore regard it as its first and foremost duty to re-establish the unity of spirit and the will of our Volk. It will preserve and defend the foundations upon which the power of our nation rests. It will extend its strong protecting hand over Christianity as the basis of our entire morality, and the family as the germ cell of the body of our Volk and state. It will reawaken in our Volk, beyond the borders of rank and class, its sense of national and political unity and its resultant duties. It will establish reverence for our great past and pride in our old traditions as the basis for the education of our German youth. Thus it will declare a merciless war against spiritual, political, and cultural nihilism. Germany must not and will not drown in anarchistic communism. Right? Christianity is the basis of our entire morality. So, understanding this, right? These are where the hippies are now sharing the same conspiracy theories that I got taught in the 80s by evangelical, grifting preachers, televangelists, that were all about the United Nations, trying to get us to worship nature, and with the New World Order, and it was a communist conspiracy to make us swallow the lie that other religions will go to heaven. These people are convinced, they're the most extreme of them, that everybody else except for born again Christians is going to burn in hell. So you know, again, Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, these Christian nationalists, these Christian fascists. 80 years ago is when the Holocaust was started. We're looking at that now. So look up Chris Hedges. I'll put some links in the description. His work on Christian fascism and Christian nationalism. But, you know, the same thing is cropping itself up. And the hippies are, funnily enough, walking with the conspiracy theories of Christian nationalists, of fundamentalist extremist Christians. So as far as Adolf Hitler goes, personally, he was kind of very skeptical about a lot of the mysticism of the Volkisch life reform movement. It reminded him of his earlier youth, which he thought he was too fantastical and you know, up in the clouds. Nevertheless, a lot of it did carry through. Not just his you know, I mean, his earlier years of art, but to his dying day, he was a strict vegetarian. He didn't smoke, he didn't drink, and yeah, he was very much an animal lover. Someone has said that a Hindu Maharaj had showed him a film of people getting eaten by animals or attacked, and he didn't flinch. And then when it showed the people killing the animals, he couldn't watch, and he turned away and said, "Oh, tell me when it's over." You know, he really loved animals, and you know, it wasn't just out of a health idea from the life reform. You know, that he didn't eat meat. He was a big animal rights activist. So yeah, you've got a lot of these, you know, life reform, Volkisch elements coming through. Of course, of these proto-hippie kind of things with Hitler. As far as the occultism goes, that was more to do with Himmler, you know, and Rudolf Hess, which we did look at before. They were the original, you know, they were really into the Volkisch life reform, Lebensreform, that we've been looking at all the way through this. And Hitler kind of was like, oh, that Himmler, you know, we've been wiping out all this mystic superstition and he's going to bring it all back, you know. So, but nevertheless, you know, Hitler did import the swastika as a Vedic symbol, you know, from India, connecting with that. So there are a lot of hippie aspects, I guess, about Hitler. There are. And these are connected to the roots of the hippie movement, again, which is in this life reform, Lebensreform, in Austria, Germany, and Switzerland mainly, which came out to the United States way back in the 1800s, early 1900s, and embraced and spawned a lot of hippie communes in the 60s. So, you know, when we're looking at the anti-vaccination, the anti-intellectual, anti-science, anti-technology conspiracy theories that target freemasons and leftists and Democrats, you know, and the corrupt capitalist parliament or the corrupt rich elites, we could remember this, you know, hippie Hitler here. So, who is this hippie? Is it Jesus? Is it like the guy that we saw in the beginning of this whole, you know, investigation? What time is this, you know? Do you think this guy would later tattoo a swastika on his third eye? Well, he did. It's Charles Manson, right? Some of you might be too young to even know who Charles Manson was. Check it out. I'm not going to go into it now. But I just want to close this by saying I'm not anti-hippie, okay? I've been called a hippie a few times. I think that's kind of like misplaced and anachronistic, but anyway, I'm totally into my esoterica. I feel like I've been on a mystical path journey since my, you know, teenage years. I have an avid interest in the occult, in all forms of religious and mystical exploration, in you know, natural medicine. I'm trained in feng shui. right? I love, the great psychedelic renaissance that's going on with indigenous plant medicine, all kinds of indigenous back to the earth, deep ecological spirituality. Obviously, all these wonderful things we've been looking at, sexual liberation, right? Nudity, okay? Organic raw food, yeah, living a healthy life, like exercising, being out in nature, looking after animals and nature and living in harmony, like getting in contact with the ancient ways. All of this is awesome, all right? I think that we do need to start looking at how can we prevent disease before that we need to get vaccines, right? If we were eating better, if we weren't, abusing animals and keeping them trapped in wet markets and cages, if we were living more healthy lifestyles in harmony with the planet, we would very likely have a lot less disease transmission and evolution. It's not going to stop it all, but just the kind of approach where we just leave it until the end and then amputate the limb. I think that the anti-vax alternative medicine group has a good point to make, that we should be looking at preventative causes as well, and we should be able to openly talk about what's going into vaccines, and are there better ways that we can work with vaccines, and even how are we able to stop us getting to the point where we even are so reliant on them anyway, right? Now, I'm not saying that all anti-vaxxers or all hippies are Nazis, okay? Do not put those words in my mouth. But I want to remind people that as well as all the good things that have come out of hippie counterculture since the late 1800s with the life reform and the folk movements and all of this, there has also been significant points where it's been hijacked and where it's gone into this extreme right-wing fucking violence, okay, and anti-intellectual book burning, silencing journalists, just because being against the mainstream is not always right, okay? I agree that the Obamas, the Clintons, the Bushes, these kind of neo-feudal dynastic families who claim to be representing democracy and aren't, they're symbols of a corrupt system that needs to be fucking taken down. I believe in democracy, right? Real democracy. And we don't have it. And when that's not given, things like whacked out conspiracy theories, neo-fascism and nationalism, Christian nationalism come up, right? So we need to be aware of that shit. I'm going to close this off with a song by Charlie Manson. A lot of you might not have understood that he was in the hippie movement. Like, he recorded some whole albums and stuff. He was working with the Beach Boys. Just to remind everyone, okay, when you're marching in these anti-lockdown, anti-COVID, anti-corrupt government things, all right, we want change. We all want change. Just be aware, okay, when you're marching with Christian fascists, with Christian nationalists, with outright same kind of hippies that went Nazi the last time, right? We've spent over an hour checking this shit out. There's plenty much more I could say. It's not the best video, but I hope that this helps you guys to springboard and, as everyone says, do your own research. Here's Charlie. Have a good night.
Your home is where you're happy. It's not where you're not free. Your home is where you can be what you are, 'cause you were born to be. Now they'll show you their castles and diamonds for all to see, but they'll never show you that peace of mind, 'cause they don't know how to be free. So burn all your bridges, leave your old life behind. You can do what you want to do, 'cause you're strong in your mind. And anywhere you might wander, you could make that your home.